a longtime qualified speaker in our district and professional speaker for that matter. Randy Powell is a high energy keynote speaker, success coach, and #1 Amazon best-selling author. Randy also is the creator of the Extraordinary Performance Success System, the Blueprint for Success, and the Envision Success brand. He has spoken on stages and to audiences of thousands from coast to coast. He continues to coach and is now hosting Envision Success live events while preparing to take that brand nationally. Randy's keynote and coaching process was originally created to help others understand the power of purpose. However, today he is focused on helping people create the courage to get unstuck. For well over 10 years, he has been a highly recognized, unforgettable keynote speaker, pressuring the energy, power, passion, and the stage presence that attracts and inspires people of all ages to go out and to achieve that big dream and hopefully have an impact on our QSs as they go out to speak. And before I forget, I wanted to mention, I think, Charlotte, you're speaking next week at Kiwanis. Is that true? And I think you spoke this summer at a different one.
That is true. I am.
Okay. All right. We'll have to chat more and see how that went. Okay. Our speaker, Randy, come on down.
Can you see me? How's everybody doing? It's a little bright. Is there a way to bring that light down on the screen just a little bit? I can see a little. Awesome, awesome. So I hope you guys weren't expecting a keynote speech today, this evening, because this is more of a teaching moment. And I'm going to do a lot of teaching and sharing. Would that be okay? And then but before I get started, before I really get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the background, kind of set the environment, as you would say. Would that be okay? Now, I'm not sure how many of you on the screen that are not here with us in person where we can get hugs and all that. I'm not sure how many of you really want to become a paid speaker or how many of you already have been paid to speak. So we're going to talk about that. And I put on my makeup, but I forgot to bring, I got my glasses, my spectacles, but I forgot to put in my eyes. So I'm going to have to wear my eyes a little bit if that's okay. Now, any of you that are present, but yet not showing your faces other than your pictures, you know, you can join us live. It's okay. And it's also okay to unmute. Don't be shy. For you lovely gentlemen and ladies in the audience, it's an awesome pleasure to be here. It's been a while since I spoke at Speakers Bureau. And I understand that we're going to be talking tonight about the Toastmaster experience as it relates to becoming a paid speaker. Is that what you asked me to talk about, Tom? And so I'm going to do three things. Do, re, mi, ABC, right? We learned that in basic training in Toastmasters, the power of three. So I'm first going to start talking a little bit about the why, the what and the why. And I'm going to give you some background on me. And then I'm going to talk about you in terms of your Toastmaster journey, not just you individually, but Toastmasters as a group. And then I'm going to talk about a little bit about what it means and how you go about getting paid to speak. And I'm going to leave you with some tips, some actual strategies on how to go get paid for speaking. Would that be okay? Okay. Now, my voice is a little off. If I sound a little, I'm not grouchy. I'm just a little raspy. So I've got a little water here. And like I said, we're not going to be too technical tonight. This is not a keynote speech. If this was a keynote speech, number one, I would not have been speaking all this week. I would have saved my voice because 45 to 60 minutes of speaking on stage or any auditorium can take its toll on your vocal cords. The other thing it can do, when you're done speaking and you really give it all you got, you're tired the next day. And I notice that the younger I get, the longer it takes me to recuperate. So it usually takes me a couple days to recuperate. The background. First of all, short story. I never wanted to become a speaker. And I didn't know anything about Toastmasters 10 years ago. And by the way, one of the things that Dr. Charlotte Noggle Ross Carter, Ken Peterson, and a few others of us used to come here to Speakers Bureau, and then we would go get something to eat at Denny's or some other location, and we would have a ball. So one of the things that is really important is to get back to this here environment here. So I wanted to share that with you. That was something that I really treasured. And I know, Charlotte, we used to have great, great times and joked a lot. And it was just a wonderful, not just coming here to Speakers Bureau, but also after Speakers Bureau. So the background is I never wanted to be a paid speaker. I never wanted to be a speaker. I didn't know I had anything to say. And the things I used to talk about, I don't talk about necessarily anymore. Interesting, huh? So I always looked at Toastmasters as a place of learning, and I call it basic training for speaking. But I didn't know anything just like anybody else. So as a new speaker or as a new Toastmasters, I sat down in the audience and I was just there to listen and to try to understand what Toastmasters was all about. And eventually, I actually started learning some stuff. And I didn't realize how the power of words, how words move people. I mean, I heard Dr. Martin Luther King and lots of great speakers, but I didn't really understand that we could have a message as individuals and we don't have to be stars and celebrities and on television and in movies. We can still have a message that's important. And most of those messages come from within and through our experiences. And as Charlotte said, when those angels speak to you, or when you have something that happens that's traumatic in life, or sometimes it's a disease, we learn to get involved in that. And then we internalize that and we say, you know what? I've learned something here. Something's happened to me, and it's time for me to make a difference in the world. And I got to tell you, at age 50, for whatever reason, at age 50, it seems as though that's when we start thinking about, hey, I'm halfway there. My life is halfway done on this earth. And so we start thinking about what value, what does it mean to be alive, and what value is there? And also, I've lost a lot of friends, and I'm sure you've lost a lot of friends, and we lost relatives. And at some point, you start getting into a position where you go, there's something more to life. And while I'm here, because I'm blessed to be here, I should be doing something more with my life. And so now let's talk about the background here with Toastmasters. Toastmasters being a basic training ground. You come into Toastmasters and you don't know anything about speaking, public speaking, and then you learn and you get your DTM, Distinguished Toastmaster. That's a really big deal. But then the question is, what do we do? What do most of us do once we become a Distinguished Toastmaster? Do we stop? Do we keep going? Well, the statistics probably are that most people stop at DTM, unless you're going to get involved in the leadership of Toastmasters International or the district and so forth. But most people just get that award, and that's about it. And then there's a percentage of people that do and decide they're going to do something more. And remember, I said decide just now. There is a decision that happens before anything else. We have to decide what it is we're going to do next. Without a decision, nothing happens. So you got a DTM. Then we came up with this qualified speaker thing. And there was a time when there were 90 people in here, 50 people, 70 people. This place was full of people. And we modeled it a little bit after the accredited speaker program from the standpoint your peers decided whether or not you were acceptable to represent District 12 and go out into the world and fill those rooms where people needed speakers. And so that's the QS. And we've got a lot of QSs. I don't know how many QSs we have now, but I know we have a lot. And the standards have changed from the time we started the QS program to where we are today. And that's okay. But then how do you go from QS, if you really want to become a paid speaker, how do you get there? What's the roadmap? And I'm going to share with you a little bit about the roadmap. Now, by a show of hands, if you are not too shy, show your face. If you've ever been paid for speaking, go ahead and raise your hand out in the public, in the marketplace. I want to see how many people, because we have to be speaking the same language in order to really communicate well. Would you agree? So Dr. Noggle has, let's see, don't be shy, keep your hands up. It looks like Mr. Flores has been paid, and who else here? Lois has been paid to speak, and Ed has been paid, Dr. Valencia. That's awesome. Now my question is, how many or more of you who have not been paid would like to be paid for speaking? I'm just curious. If you want to show your hand, you can. But we have to understand who we're talking to. Now, we also have to understand the language and the definition. And in the title of the talk, it's going from novice to noteworthy, and doing that in the realm of the Toastmaster world, and then moving to the outside world, what I call the private market, the marketplace. And so there's a lot of different ways to go about doing that. And I'll share with you that when it happened for me, it happened first inside of Toastmasters. So I got my feet wet in Toastmasters. It was at Cal Baptist University, and I was speaking to 300 people at one of our events, and that was the first time that I had spoken to a large audience. I consider 300 people a good-sized audience. I've spoken to 3,000, but at the time, remember, I'm still in basic training, so at the time, 300 was a big deal. And I still remember the first time I got paid to speak. You notice I said I got my feet wet at District 12, but I got paid $250 in San Diego, and I thought I was hot stuff. I thought, man, this is some cool stuff. $250. Well, it was great stuff. But $250 in the paid speaking world is not really cutting the mustard, as my mama used to say. But if you had never been given $1 for speaking, and you had the opportunity to stand in front of a group and share a message and get the nods and really people connected with you, then it was a good feeling. I drove home from San Diego, and I could not believe that I had a check in my pocket for $250. And I kept that check for a long time. I put it on my board at home just because it was something special. Like Charlotte said, this is so special of an item that she was given by her angel. Moving on, I did something that I think is very hard for people to do. I studied my buttocks off. I decided at that time that Les Brown was one of the teachers that I wanted to study, and I spent hours upon hours upon hours studying Les Brown. In fact, if you go back and look at some of the old stuff, I had a dark suit, a white shirt, and a red power tie on. Why? Because Les did it. And then I had the opportunity, because of Toastmasters, I had the opportunity to travel with Dana Lamont. So let me share that story with you. Some of you may know Cheryl Roush. I don't know if you know Cheryl Roush. I think you might know Cheryl Roush. She was one of the sponsors at the internationals, right? But Cheryl's my coach, has been my coach for many years. And I remember calling Cheryl up after hearing Dana Lamont speak here in this auditorium, and his voice resonated throughout my body. It rumbled. And if you've ever heard Dana Lamont speak, and he used to say to me, Rondo, but I'll tell you that story in a minute. So I said, Cheryl, how do I get to speak with Dana Lamont? How do I get to learn from him and study him? And she said, ask. I was waiting for some profound knowledge, some information, and she said, ask. And I want you to remember that three-letter word, because too many of us are afraid to ask. I teach people to ask. I show them how to ask. It's very, very important, because we put people on pedestals. I certainly had Dana Lamont there, and all I did was write an email. So I wrote an email, and I was in Toledo, Ohio, visiting my mother, and it had been over 2 months, and I had already put it out of my mind it was not going to happen. Let me tell you, never put it out of your mind that it's not going to happen. Always now, I'm thinking it's going to happen because I'm going to create the opportunity for it to happen. But back then, I didn't have enough in me to know that it's possible to create your own reality. So I'm sitting there on the couch with my mom having this conversation, and all of a sudden the phone rings and, Rondo, this is Dana Lamont. And my mom looked at me, God rest her soul, and I had the biggest grin on my face, and my mom tilted her head. You see the puppy dog tilt their head a little bit like, what's going on? She tilted her head like, what's going on? And so he asked me, will you be available to travel with me to Columbus, Ohio, Cincinnati, in a couple of weeks? And I said, I'm in Toledo, Ohio right now. You want me to stay here, Dana? He said, no, go home. People will call you. We'll get this all arranged and worked out. So I had to call Cheryl and tell her, hey, this really is happening. And she's like, you're going to have a university degree in 3 days when you finish. And I did. And let me tell you, it was the best teaching moments that weekend, and I'll never, ever forget it. And I don't have time to share all the wisdom and the thoughts and what he shared with me, but it really made a big difference. So it was one of those next level events. And then a colleague of mine, somebody I met on the internet, said to me, somebody's looking for a speaker. Would you be interested? And here's the lesson here. Always say yes. Figure it out later, but always say yes. We've heard people say that, but it's very difficult because our first intuition is to say no, because we haven't figured it out. We don't know. But you figure it out after you say yes. And that was at Sherwin-Williams in Chicago. They flew me to Sherwin-Williams in Chicago. I'm in a manufacturing center, and at that time, I was in safety and environmental, and I was in security, and I had a different background, and I was still just fresh out of the government, retiring, and got paid to speak. Wonderfully paid. And then I started thinking, man, that $250 check is going to the bank and get cashed because things have changed. So then from there, I started creating relationships with people. I got brave and bold. And we don't do anything by ourselves. We need to understand that we need other people. The reason you're here at Toastmasters hanging around this long because you need other people. You just do. And we are social critters, right? But it's the type of relationships that you have to learn to create. Meaningful relationships, powerful relationships. And as Rami Al-Bartwari, he's a billionaire, and I happen to have the pleasure of meeting him this past year, as he will say, he never does a deal unless it's a win-win for every single person involved. And if we could just hold on to that for a moment. Don't do the deal. Whatever the deal is for you. For him, it's business. Big deals. But whatever the deal is, if it's not a win-win for everyone involved, you should turn around, keep it to yourself, and run. Because that's not the mark of a good speaker, coach, business person, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it. Everyone needs to win if you're going to be doing it. I'm going to share something here with you. I'm going to pull out a note, put on my spectacles, because I don't want you to miss this. And I really think that if you don't miss this, it's going to have an impact on you. So novice is beginner, and noteworthy, the definition of noteworthy is to be worthy of attention. So how do you become worthy of attention? Well, you have to bring some value to the marketplace. So you have to know what it is that you're delivering to the marketplace. You have to have that message, that product, that service, and you have to know it and be it and know it so well that people understand you, that you have something that they need, and you have to solve a problem. It could be a big problem, it could be a moderate-sized problem, but there's got to be enough people who need that problem solved so that you can actually run a business around it or sell something around it and market to it. Because we all have problems. And so what problem are you solving? And I want you to think about that, because whether you're doing a keynote, whether you're doing a breakout session at a conference, whether you write a book, no matter what you do, whether it's a product or a service, you have to be able to answer the question, what's the problem that you're solving for people? And you have to be able to persuade them that you're the person to help them get from where they are to where they want to be. And if you can do that, you can make a living speaking, coaching, entrepreneurial, whatever business it is. If you can communicate that well, and they know you mean good for them, then you're not going to have a difficult time. And so how do you step from QS out into the streets and become a marketable person with a product, a service that's going to solve problems and change people's lives and add value to people's lives? By the way, I'm going to share with you, because I don't have time to teach everything tonight, but there are 12 must-dos. 12 must-dos. And I'm sorry, but they're must-dos. And the first three, most people aren't willing to do. Now, how do you have 12 do's and the first three, most people aren't willing to do? It's mind-boggling. And then we wonder why they're on television, they're in the movies, they're doing what they want to do. I'm watching them live their dream, and I'm not living my dream. And life is half over for me. How do I do it? I'm going to give you the first three. I'm going to give them all to you, but I want you to understand that these first three, if you can't do this, the rest mean nothing. So you got to show up. You got to show up. Sounds really simple, doesn't it? Do you know how many people say they want something, but when you tell them, hey, come on over here, they don't show up? You know how many invitations we send out to people? And even when we get them in the room, a small percentage will go to the next step and the next step. Very small. So you got to show up everywhere. If you want to become a paid speaker, you got to go where paid speakers are and watch them and listen to them and learn from them and model them. Find somebody who you really admire and even ask, like I did Dana Lamar. Ask. The second thing is you've got to invest in yourself. And it's really, really hard to invest in yourself. It's really, really easy to go spend $200 on a pair of sneakers. It's really, really easy to go to Disneyland. It's really, really easy to take a trip somewhere and spend a whole lot of money at a all-inclusive, but it's really hard for people to invest in themselves. Figure that one out. That's remarkable, but it's true. And here's if that's not enough for you, that people won't do that, here's one for you. People won't do the work. People are actually lazy. They won't do the work. But they want people to think they're doing the work. And that's a problem. But if you can get past those three, and I'll tell you how you do it. It takes time. And by the way, raise your hand if you've ever heard the statement that time is money. Yeah, I know you all have. I know you all heard it, and it's a lie. It's not true. It's false. Time is not money. I can prove it to you. Would you like me to prove it to you? If you had cancer and you're on your deathbed and somebody came in, they said, we got the cure to that cancer, but it's going to cost you $1 million. You have the $1 million. You only have so much time left to live. That $1 million is going to be given away to them, isn't it? So then how is it that time is money? Time's not. The most valuable asset you have is time. If you are making $250, $300 an hour, and you're sitting in your home office, and you could be on the phone with a client, But yet, instead of doing that, you get up and you go outside and you cut the grass, and that takes you an hour or two. But you could have paid someone $25, and they would be happy to be a win for them, and you could also be inside creating, serving, doing what you do best because you value your time. How is time money? See, they sound like they're truisms, and they sound nice, but they're not. They're not necessarily true. You got to pay attention to what you're listening to. So it takes time. It takes commitment too. But people are cheap. That's the second one. People are cheap when it comes to doing what stays with them for life. A lot of people would be in college, not just because they can't afford it. They're too cheap to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, to do whatever it takes. When you want to become a paid speaker, when you want to become the best of what you do in your craft, your art, your whatever, you have to be willing. You have to be willing. But most people don't see the value. And that's something nobody can take away from you. Once you get it, once you have it here, no one can take it from you. And I already told you the third thing is people are just simply lazy. But I'm going to go through 4 through 12 with you just so you have an idea of what they are. You have to have a compelling message. I said that. It solves a problem. It has value. You have to create some powerful and great relationships. You have to really get good at studying your craft. 7, become bigger than life. You got to gig hunt every day, and there's ways to go about gig hunting, but you got to do it every day. You got to pick up the phone. You got to ask somebody. You got to put it out there that you're looking. Nobody's going to come and knock on the door. We already talked about 9 ask. You got to go where you want to speak. How do you know you want to speak somewhere if you haven't gone there? I spoke at Meeting Planners International. How many of you know what Meeting Planners International is? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of Meeting Planners International. If you want to become a paid professional speaker, you need to check out MPI. There are chapters in every state, and there are multiple chapters in every state, or in most states. They flew me back east to Washington, D.C., had a wonderful time, picked me up in a limousine, a newspaper was there, the drinks were there, took me to the hotel, to MGM Grand on the other side of Potomac, and whisked me up to my hotel room. Then they brought me down and showed me the place where we'd be speaking. And the next day spoke, and the third day picked me up in the car and took me back to the airport and made sure I got home safely. Called me and made sure I was home safely. That was one of the, let's say, premier times, because going coast to coast can wear you out. But when you have someone there greeting you and taking care of you, it's an awesome situation. So what are some of the strategies? Make the cold calls. In other words, you got to make the effort. 3 of these are efforts. You got to connect with people through key relationships. I have a relationship with Craig Deswald. That's why I left that book up here for someone. I already signed it. I'm in the back of the book. But the point is, Craig Deswald, I'm in his mastermind. I've been following him for years. It took years to save up enough peanuts to be able to join his mastermind, but I realized the value of investing in that mastermind was going to move me to the next level, and the next level, and the next level. And guess what? I've got a live event coming up, and James Barber and Craig Deswald are 2 of my guest speakers in the afternoon. And guess what? James Barber played Beauty and the Beast on Broadway, and he was the Beast. He played Phantom of the Opera on Broadway, and he was the Phantom. So how do you get to be in the same room with these kind of people? You got to invest in yourself. You got to create relationships. You got to go where they go. You got to ask. That's how you get picked up out there in the marketplace. You got to be seen and you got to be heard, and you have to be on the internet. Unfortunately, social media is somewhere you have to pick where you want to be, but you have to get out there. You have to have a professional website. All the basic stuff, yes, you have to have that. But the most important thing you can do is be out there, serve others, and create those relationships, because if you can't get in the room where they are, you're on the outside looking in. But once you get in the room, everything changes. It's like once you get on the yacht. If you're on a yacht with other people, I guarantee you they're not talking about baseball. They're talking about buying baseball teams. See, there's a difference in the conversation, but you have to be willing to get in the room, and you have to work to get in the room, and you have to be real, authentic. You have to be honest. You have to be open. You have to be open to criticism and feedback so that you can grow, and you have to be genuine because they are there serving other people, and that's why they're creating value in the marketplace, and they're getting paid to speak, they're getting paid to coach, and every single one of you who really truly wants to do that can do that. Novice to noteworthy. Step out there. That's really what it takes. It takes you stepping out. So I don't know if you have stepped out. I don't know if you have been told no 10 times, 20 times. I've put in for gigs to go work and they pick someone else. And you know what? That's okay. You got to get okay with no's. You got to get okay with it's just not me that they need, because you never know what the meeting planner is looking for. They're not going to tell you what they're looking for. So you have to know that no matter how many times you're going at it, that you're going to keep going at it and never, as Diane Piella says, never, ever, ever give up. If you have a dream, go for it. If you have a dream, ask for help. If you have a dream, see who else is already living that dream. If yours is a little different, get to where they are and then cultivate your dream to go in the direction that you want, because somebody's already done what we want to do. There are only a few creators, brand new creators, that are going to create something that the world is going to see that hasn't been done before. One of them's passed away, the iPhone. Changed, revolutionized the entire world in our communications. But that doesn't happen that often. But you're doing something, you want to do something that somebody else has done, you could do a little bit different, a little bit better, put your own tweak on it, and you can get paid to speak. But you gotta follow the rules. And what are the rules? You gotta get a coach. You need a coach, somebody has done what you've done. You need to invest in yourself, no matter who that is, what it is. You have to pay to get in the room. You do. You have to pay to get in the room. And you have to keep at it and keep at it no matter how your feelings. If you're having a bad day, you got to know that the next day you can get up and you can start all over. There are days when it seems like nothing's happening right. And then the next day, everything falls into place. And you got to know that that's going to happen. Anybody on the screen, anybody here can teach themselves and make the move to go out and become a paid speaker, if that's what you want. I'll leave you with this thought. I always wanted to be a Les Brown or keynote speaker, and I loved him. And then I got to a point where I realized keynote speaking is not going to for me, is not going to pay the bills. So what do you do in that revelation? When you know what you want to do is not necessarily, you carve out another piece of something you love to do. And I found out that I love coaching. I love adding value to other people, sitting down with them, having great conversations, peeling back the onion, finding out what's holding them back, what's got them stuck, because I was stuck at a point in time, what's got them stuck, and I help them get unstuck, and I feel good, and I make an income, because keynote speaking, you have to speak an awful lot during a keynote. I mean, you got to do some of the more well-known speakers were at one time, like Les, was speaking 80, 90 times a year and having to go around the globe. I don't want to go around the globe. But there are some places I would like to go. But I can make a really nice living just coaching individuals to their next level and beyond. Find somebody who believes in you if you don't believe in yourself. Find somebody who believes in you that'll walk the walk with you and keep you pumped until you can learn to believe in yourself. And the small base hits is what'll get you there. Most people try to hit home runs. Don't try to hit a home run. Just get on first base, second base, third base, because most baseball games are won not by home runs. See, we try to hit a home run, and that's not going to do it for us. But if you can get on first base, and then you can get on second base, those small base hits, before you know it, not only will you have won, and remember, this is the biggest game that you'll ever play, the game of life. It's the biggest game you'll ever play. And the clock is ticking. I'm years old, and I know the clock is ticking. I don't know how old you are. I know I look good, but I have to wear a lot of makeup, like Prince. But the clock is ticking. So if you really want to do this, get paid for speaking, you gotta start tomorrow, or you don't really want to. That's how important it is. If you're one of the, I don't know how many we got on here, it's 21. If one of the 21 on here wants to get paid for speaking, you can do it, but you got to start tomorrow. Thank you so much.